Good afternoon. We're starting the meeting, and Mr. Herman and Mr. Spindler, this is your first and last warning. Good afternoon. Welcome to the meeting, Wednesday, June 28th, 2017. I'm Councilman Mike Bonin, joined by Mr. David Rue from the 4th District and Mr. Jose Huizar from the 14th District. We are going to get right down to business today because we started an hour late, and a couple of us have a committee meeting that starts in an hour. So we have public comment from Ms. Ramirez, Mr. Herman, and Mr. Spindler. Please come all up at the same time and have a seat. All three come up at the same time, please. You have a total of 2 minutes each for each of the agenda items and a minute for general public comment for a total of 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll begin. I start with item number 4. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of for-sale vehicles parked on the streets all over, and it is an urban blight, no doubt about it. I mean, we have to be objective, and it really looks tacky. It looks distressed, and it does bring the value down in neighborhoods. Let's be honest about that. Even if I am homeless or we are homeless, it looks tacky. It looks dreadful. We want to improve the quality and the looks of Los Angeles. And I have found out that many of the for-sale signs owned by these vehicles are from prison inmates who just got out of prison. They need jobs. So the gang homies provide them a job, and that is to give them vehicles to sell to whomever. So these prison individuals, whether they are black or Latino, and I've come to learn that because I live in South Central LA, and everyone that I've seen in this so-called transitional housing, they are prisoners. A black prison who did 15 years, and other Latino gangbangers from the Mexican mafia who did a couple of 20 years. They are now doing jobs of selling vehicles. So that, please, pick up these goddamn vehicles and deprive them of jobs and get these goddamn wetbacks and gangbangers deported. We've had enough of these fucking gangbangers. And number 9 and number 9. LA Dot and I'm all for the Los Angeles streetcar project. I hope that this will also ease the traffic congestions, the gridlocks, and a lot of the pollution, and a lot of the, again, we have a lot of gangbangers, epidemic of gangbangers doing their drug deals all over public, on the buses, the trains, etc. Hopefully this is a new stage where we will have better policing and we will have cleaner, safer streets. That's what we want. And number 10 is, well, prosecution here. Relative to amending, storing vehicles on the streets, where else can we store vehicles? Do you have a place in every city that you can store vehicles safely? There are good people that do need to store vehicles because they have too many cars. Like most of these wetbacks, they have 10 cars parked in their parking lot, so they have to start storing their vehicles for their kids and their grandkids on every street. So let's find a place where they can legally and safely store their vehicles. And we must also talk about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, our president, is going to improve the quality of life for all Angelenos and all Americans. God bless Donald Trump, and God bless the United States military. Thank you. And my
item
Mr. Herman.
Did I?
No, that included all 3 minutes.
And what about the public comments?
That you covered it.
I did. Oh,
yeah.
Darn it! I was going to talk about the lesbos and the gays, but okay. Thank you.
Oh.
Well, there's always next time.
Oh,
Yay! Yes. So now that we're talking about Mr. Bonin and the LGBT and Qs, let's talk about strong vehicles, expressly prohibiting these strong vehicles. Well, let's talk about misdemeanor violations. First of all, I recall that my constitutional right were violated when Herb Wesson decided to fucking kick me out of a public meeting for simply saluting a flag or exercising the fucking whatever you want to call it. Anyways, I brought my Kaiser bag to remind her that I filed a discrimination in addition to my stress-related injury here at City Hall. You guys want to stress people out working at City Hall? Well, guess what, motherfuckers? I'm going to bring my doctor complaint against you, niggers. And then now let me go into the action of the agenda. CD 13, fuck O'Farrell for the establishment of oversized vehicle restricted streets. Well, you know what? People need to sleep in their vehicles because there's no housing. Was it Mr. Spinner's comment in Venice last night about the restrictions on housing and no housing? Wasn't that what you talked about with Cedillo? Cedillo talked about it today. We need more housing. There's a crisis, a shortage.
This is the Transportation Committee, not the
Right,
Housing
and
Committee.
I'm talking about the transportation that some of us live in. Oversized motorhomes, oversized vans, our trucks, our cars, our skateboards, our bikes. We all live with these fucking items. So if you restrict us, guess what? We have no fucking place to put our home. In addition to that, you fucking racist assholes, regarding what? Wesson, established oversized vehicle. Here's another one. Fuck Obama and fuck your Obama declaration of a street. You know why? Because people need to live in their fucking vehicles.
You're out of order, Mr. Herman.
Look, it's
On
naughty.
both sides of South
Hello,
Bronson
naughty.
Avenue and the Coliseum.
Ah.
So I'm on topic, you fucking morons. And then to item number CD9. Oh, now we got Nuri here. Yeah. Let me go back to public comment on that.
Yes.
No, you don't get to go back to public comment.
Wetbacks,
Mr. Herman.
wetbacks have a
Mr.
right
Herman.
to live in their cars. Wetbacks shouldn't be deported 3 times and sent back to their fucking country.
Which item are
because
you
they live
addressing,
in their
Mr.
cars.
Herman?
I'm talking about living in your fucking vehicle.
Which item are you addressing, Mr. Herman?
You're not paying attention. That's not my fucking fault, moron.
Which item are you addressing?
Pay attention, moron. Pay attention. Like I said, when Nuri and Peppa Pig just walk in the last few seconds, fuck you for the record, and fuck your immigration reform.
And you're out of time.
Yay. Yes, it's so good.
Mr. Spindler.
Yes. For the record, Nuri and Peppa Pig showed up. Full quorum. Now, what we forgot to ask was, how did Nuri and Mr. Peppa Pig get here, by car or by foot? Yes, Nuri got here by foot after Daddy was deported 3 times. Yes, a trivia quiz. So now, let's get to the sheet. CD 13, oversized street vehicles. Fuck this, no. You put this up on Bronson, by the way. You think we don't know? Pigs know everything. Even though you eat us for bacon, we have good memories.
Excuse me,
and
Mr. Herman, you're excused.
Oh, no,
You're Mr. Herman, you're out of here.
no.
You mean I'm out of time?
Yes.
Out of the room.
Oh. Yeah. Is
Let me get my LGBT.
it an actual disruption? Was it a disruption? Yes. Well, okay, CD 12, ran by a midget 5th place finisher, Mitchell Englander, that human scumbag, no. Number 3, Wesson, the one with the phony tiara, which the DA called. He called our friend today to investigate an open investigation. No to the perjurer. Number 4, 9, Price, Harris Dawson. Harris Dawson doesn't like to give the statute and the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes, we like him, but no on 9. And then number 5, the city attorney. The city attorney should not be amending any ordinance. Mike Fear needs to talk to the deputy district attorney and your investigator about ethics rule 5-110, filing a criminal complaint to gain an unfair advantage in a civil case. Very interesting shit. Yes. And then, of course, other bullshit, Measure M, no, Taylor Yard, the scam of the century. Taylor Yard, The goddamn toxic cleanup. $39 million cleanup, which these thieves approved with no funding. Poor people. Number 9, the Bureau of Engineering. Get rid of the homeless encampments, and then we'll talk about safe streets and sidewalks and transportation corridors. And then number 10, misdemeanor violations for storing vehicles. This is Nuri Martinez's continued attack on the poor. She's trying to get rid of her pimps. See? Nuri. I know he's a pimp. I know he's a pimp. So we have a CD6 update. Nuri's trying to displace the pimps. Good luck with that. Pimps love Nuri and Nuri loves pimps. Pimps love Nuri and Nuri loves pimps.
And time is up.
Thank you so much.
Okay, for the record, Ms. Martinez and Mr. Koretz have arrived. I'm sure you're grateful you arrived in time for public comment.
Not necessarily the best timing.
So, colleagues, I'm recommending for Mr. Spindler, that was your last disruption. You're out of here. You just disrupted the meeting, and you're continuing to do so now. So, colleagues, I'm recommending for consent items 1, 2, and 3. Are there any objections?
Say that again?
Items 1, 2, and 3 for consent.
That's fine.
Okay. Without objection, those 3 items are approved. That brings us to item number 4.
Item number 4 is a Price-Harris-Dawson motion relative to amending LAMC Section 87.55, which establishes regulation for parking of vehicles for private sale on certain streets.
Okay. Is CD9 here? Come on up. Good afternoon.
Ms. Rosario from Council District 9. We put this motion forward because of an issue with cars for sale being parked along St. Cecilia Baptist Church. In addition to the church being there, they also have a school, which is in the northern portion of the church. So there's a nice, long, unbroken sidewalk where folks are parking. When we first took office in 2003, approximately 2014, we actually had to put in a stoplight because there was an issue not only with speeding, but a young man was killed at the same intersection. We want to try to keep his visibility there, but also not reduce parking for the people in the community. It is residential, so there are houses across the street in CD8. If you look at the photos, you'll see several vehicles for sale. There's approximately 5 in the photos that I gave to you. On any given day, there can be up to 9 or 10 vehicles parked solely on the east side of the street.
And let me note for the record, we've received a letter from Mr. Price's office with an attachment, a map showing proposed boundaries, a close-up of vehicles for sale, vehicles parked in front of a church, an additional image illustrating the problem, and a Google Street View image taken February 14th, 2017, showing vehicles for sale visible. Mr. Nagel, is that sufficient to meet the findings?
Yes.
Great. All right, so let's close the hearing. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved and seconded without objection. That is the direction of the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item number 5.
Item number 5 is City Attorney reports and ordinances relative to amending the Los Angeles Administrative Code to 1, expand the Council District Real Property Trust Fund to include all pipeline franchises, 2, transfer pipeline franchising responsibilities from LADOT to the Board of Public Works, and 3, to transfer the petroleum administrator function from the CAO to the Board of Public Works.
Okay, is staff here, Uduak or Fernando? Uduak, you'd be amazed at what spell check did to your name.
Yeah, it usually comes up as usual. Fernando Campos, Executive Officer with the Board of Public Works, joined with Uduak Intug, our Petroleum Administrator. The item before you are 3 proposed ordinances to make a series of amendments to the municipal code and also administrative code, not only to transfer the function over from the Department of Transportation over to the Board of Public Works, but also to correct some of the transfer of functions that was done from CAO's office to the Department of Transportation. So that brings us up to date. And then in addition to that, the third amendment that's before you is to make some changes to the real property trust fund to distribute the funding that would result from the removal of the word oil and public right-of-way to all council districts.
Okay, anything like that?
Yes, this is a continuation of several different council items to transfer the function from Department of Transportation to Public Works and under the Office of Petroleum Administration of all the pipeline franchises. We currently just renewed 36 that were expired into 1-year terms with an additional 9-month option to give us time to negotiate long-term agreements. And then also this is officially moving the function of Petroleum Administration from the CAO's office into the Board of Public Works.
So a lot of this is sort of custodial stuff that we probably should have thought about when we brought you on board, and we're finally getting around to it.
Finally get the authority to do the work.
Yeah, well, that would be good.
That has already been done.
Colleagues, any questions?
How are we voting on this? Because I only have are we going to trifurcate this vote? Because there's, the ordinance asks us to approve 3 items on this one item. So I just want to make sure I'm on the record.
There's three separate ordinances.
Okay. So can we vote on them separately?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. The first ordinance transfers both petroleum administration and pipeline franchise responsibilities to the Board of Public Works. Do we have a recommendation to approve?
Move we approve.
Is there a second? Any objection? Okay. That one is approved unanimously. The second moves the petroleum administrator function from the CAO to the Board of Public Works. Is there any objection on that one?
No.
Okay. It's unanimously approved. And the third is to direct net proceeds from all pipeline franchise agreements into the Council District Real Property Trust funds.
That one I'm a no on.
Okay.
And only, I just want to make it clear, we have not identified funding to backfill the $8 million hit on the general fund, and that's why I'm not supporting this at this time.
Okay. All right. Although it's not assumed in this year's budget, that revenue is correct?
That's the other thing. We haven't discussed it in budget either.
Yeah,
Right. It'll be going to budget,
Budget
for sure.
and Finance will have a healthy deliberation on that discussion.
Ms. Martinez, I wonder if you could describe that issue a little more fully, because I'm not.
Well, the way I understand it is currently they're asking, it's an $8 million hit on the general fund that would be transferred back to each council district. And we haven't figured out how we're going to backfill that.
Yeah, that
in
is
the coming years, and it's a real issue. I sit on the budget committee, that's why I'm raising this question.
Absolutely. That is correct, Councilwoman Martinez. Your assessment is correct in terms of the hit that the general fund would take. By removing the word oil and public right-of-way, it would allow us to distribute the funding that we receive from the Southern California Gas Company, which is currently about $16 million. If we were to split this, it would be an $8 million hit. So the one challenge that we have not only is how do we make the general fund whole, but there are other challenges that will come with that, and that is how do we distribute that money equally to the council districts. The current ordinance calls that for the first 25%, it's distributed equally. The remaining 25%, so up to the 50%, it's based on diameter and size of the pipeline. The SoCal Gas franchise agreement does not have pipeline information. We collect revenue based on the revenues earned by Southern California and reported by Southern California Gas Company. So therefore, it becomes problematic in terms of how do we distribute that money. Working with our petroleum administrator, we do have some information on file, but it is going to take us some time to figure out the details in terms of what square footage is in each district and how do we distribute that money.
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to vote on this today, but also I don't know if it's worth moving this discussion of the pipeline franchise money being split between Real Property Trust Fund and the general fund to the Budget and Finance Committee, or if you want to take a vote today.
It will go to Budget and Finance after we vote. Public Works Committee voted on it.
Right.
Then we get it, and then it goes to Budget and Finance. It won't come to Council until all 3 committees have considered.
You might note in the Public Works Committee, they didn't vote on that item. They voted on the other items.
Correct. Because I sit on that committee as well.
Right.
Okay. So,
So when it,
go ahead.
when do you expect it to go to budget, and will they have additional
I
information?
asked that question of the chair this afternoon, and it has not been scheduled yet, but I'm sure it will be. But they didn't have a date.
And will you have any additional information by then?
No, probably not.
And there's nothing to say that we can't, out of Budget and Finance may recommend moving 2 of these and holding the third one for the FSR.
Correct.
Right. It comes down to a policy decision in terms of where we distribute the money and then how we make the general fund whole. In addition to that, there is another report that's coming from the Board of Public Works in the same council file that has yet to be discussed and heard by Budget and Finance. We're hoping that that report will be heard at the same time that this ordinances will be considered, and that is the question of staffing for the Petroleum Administration Office, and also how do we fund the function. And so one proposal in that report, which is separate before you, provides some options there. In addition to that, that report also recommends spreading if your council were to approve the ordinances as is, the recommendation is to spread the money equally across all council districts as opposed to taking a...
So Public Works voted on the first 2 ordinances and did not on the third, is that correct? So colleagues, why don't we do the same?
That's what I was trying to propose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any objections to that approach? That way, we do the 2 policy ones, Budget and Finance will weigh in on the... Okay. So with that objection, that's the direction of the committee. Is that clear, Mr. Lid? Yeah, more or less. All right, that brings us to item number 6.
Item number 6 is a Board of Public Works report, mitigated negative declaration, and mitigation monitoring and reporting program relative to the Taylor Yards Bridge pedestrian, Taylor Yard Bikeway pedestrian bridge over the Los Angeles River project.
All right, Board of Public Works heard this on June 13th. Public Works waived consideration. Is staff from BOE here? Come on up. Staff or colleagues, any questions for staff?
Good afternoon. My name is Norman Mundy, Bureau of Engineering.
This item need to be amended? The recommendation need to be amended?
There are some technical corrections that we'd like to enter into the record for the mitigation monitoring and reporting plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I have given a copy of those technical amendments to the clerk of the committee. I could read them into the record if you'd like, or if the written copy is sufficient, we can proceed that way. Whatever you'd like to do.
Written's fine.
Written's fine.
Any questions, colleagues?
I do. I have just
Sure.
a question. And just because this, we had approved the La Crest Bridge on Glendale Boulevard a couple of weeks ago. So do you anticipate that the construction of this bridge would occur at the same time that the La Crest Bridge on Glendale Boulevard in Atwater Village?
I'm not sure of exactly of the construction schedule for the bridge.
It's not in the same location, but it's in that same, it's along the river.
Deborah Weintraub, Bureau of Engineering. No, the La Crest Bridge, which is the North Atwater Bridge, was just awarded. This bridge will be awarded approximately a year from now. So there should be no overlap.
So this bridge will be awarded a year from now?
Yeah.
Okay. So there shouldn't be, okay.
This is the environmental document.
So, well, my point was, does the M&D of these 2 construction projects along the river at the same time, shouldn't it consider both of them?
We always look at associated projects. I don't know if specifically the North Atwater Bridge was included in your analysis, is the question.
I don't believe there will be significant overlap between the construction of the 2 projects. As
I was just wondering if the environmental document should reflect that.
Oh, yes.
Take that into account.
Oh, yes, as part of our environmental document, yes. Since we went second, we did consider that as a separate project that would be going on in the same time frame.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
As amended, thank you.
As amended, right. Okay, without objection. That brings us to item number 7.
Item number 7 is an adopted budget recommendation relative to instructing the CAO to report in regard to the Measure M fund administration.
Okay, is staff here? Angela from DOT and Mr. Hirano? Dave's not here? Half the fun of chairing this committee is being able to tease Dave Herrano.
Oh, I agree with that.
How you doing?
Good afternoon. Ida Rubio with the Office of the CEO. Mr. Hano is not here today, but I know he has been having conversations with LADOT regarding the possibility of them administering the fund. Going back to the adopted budget, the original proposal was that because of the way the money was being programmed, it made sense from an efficiency standpoint to have the Public Works administer the fund.
That was a foolish idea, and you've since changed your mind.
So, at this point, we don't have a recommendation other than the conversations that have been occurring, and your council can decide. If you decide otherwise, you can always instruct the city attorney's office to draft an ordinance to state something different.
Angela?
Yes, Angela Berman, LADOT. So LADOT does believe that it is a better natural fit for us to administer this fund. We currently administer all other transportation sales tax funds such as Prop A, Prop C, and Measure R. Excuse me. We've also been working very closely with Metro on the draft guidelines for Measure R. So we've been very intimately involved in how those eligibilities and guidelines will eventually shake out. So in addition to us working very closely with them on all of the auditing requirements that will come forward, similar to Prop A and C and Measure R, we feel it's just a more natural fit for us.
Sure. Well, and thank you for that. I personally agree with DOT's recommendation on this, and as a member of the Metro Board, I have a perspective that leads me to that conclusion. As you noted, DOT manages all the other transportation-related funds. This doesn't determine the programming. It just determines who administers it. And DOT has an existing team of support staff that knows how to do the work. They have the existing relationships with Metro, and significantly, they know how to successfully screen projects for eligibility with Metro funding, which is critical because ineligible expenditures could require a payback of funding to Metro, which is a potential general fund hit. And DOT has also participated with Metro in developing the Measure M local return guidelines, so they're well versed in the eligibility criteria for the fund and know how to administer it. Not a function Public Works has. They also lack the experience in determining the eligibility and the criteria. So this seems like the reasonable way to go. Anyone have any questions or anybody inclined to make a motion?
I just had a quick question. Does DOT want the responsibility of administering the funds?
Yes, we'll happily take on that fund. We can fold it better into our portfolio than Public Works, and so, yes.
Are there any cost savings in achieving this, if we make this move?
We would be requiring the same position that was provided to the Board of Public Works, which is one senior accountant, but we believe we'll be able to ramp up quicker with the new position, so there's the efficiency that we're looking at.
Okay. And
Yes, if you would like to implement that right now, then my recommendation would be to delete the resolution authority for one senior accountant, one in the Board of Public Works, and add resolution authority for one senior accountant, one in the Department of Transportation for Measure M Fund Administration. Since you moved the money to the UB for that position, subject to the approval of the mayor, appropriate $62,108 from the unappropriated balance fund number 100-58 to DOT fund number 194 account 1010, which is their salaries, for the one senior accountant position, and then instruct CAO to take the necessary steps to make adjustments to the Board of Public Works and DOT position authorities in the PAR and or the Department Personnel Ordinance consistent with this action and authorize DOT to fill the position.
thank you for that. That was very detailed. Do we have a motion to approve that recommendation?
So moved.
Second? Okay, without objection, that's the recommendation of the committee. Thank you very much. That brings us to items 8 and 9, which I think we'll take simultaneously in as much as they both deal with the downtown LA streetcar.
Okay, item 8 is a city attorney report and ordinance relative to authorizing the Department of Public Works to use the competitive sealed proposal selection process and construction manager general contractor CMGC project delivery method for the streetcar project consistent with Charter Section 371. And then item number 9 is the joint CAO BOE DOT report relative to the preliminary engineering project schedule and new independent cost estimate for the proposed streetcar project.
Okay. Mr. Weezer, we have 2 public comment cards. Would it be your preference to start with staff, public comment, or would you like to make some opening remarks?
No, we could do staff, then public comment, and then discussion. If
Okay.
that's okay with you?
All right. So, staff, if you could...
Good afternoon, Deborah Weintraub, Chief Deputy City Engineer, Bureau of Engineering.
Ida Rubio with the Office of the CAO.
And Carrie Dardarian with LADOT.
Council members, in June of 15, the 3 departments came to you with a report on the streetcar. And then subsequently, City Council approved that report and told us to proceed with preliminary engineering, approximately 30% design. They directed engineering to oversee that process. Council established a project cost target of $250 million, and they told us to come back with those results, and that's really what we're here today to report on. We also were, the target of $250 million was based on the FTA Small Starts Grant maximum, which has since been increased to $300 million. So today's report summarizes an update for you on the preliminary engineering, the project schedule, the new independent cost estimate, which we were also directed to do. We have completed with Mott McDonald, under a contract with Lassie LA Streetcar Inc., the 30% design. All 4 project alignments were brought to a 30% level, and the net results of that is that the streetcar is proposed to be built on a fixed transit guideway in a shared traffic condition. The vehicles will be modern articulated streetcars that meets the California Public Utility Commission requirements, and it all complies with the Federal Transit Administration's Buy America requirements. The streetcar would operate at the posted road speeds, and based on the traffic modeling study that we have done, it will be approximately 6 miles per hour operating speed during peak afternoon hours, and approximately 7 minutes between streetcars during peak hours, and 10 to 15 minutes at off-peak hours. Based on our design, the project would require 6 vehicles, plus 2 additional for spares. We also identified and brought to 15% design the sites for the vehicle maintenance facilities. The 30% design were done with under the auspices of engineering and our partners, and comply fully with all the requirements that you would expect these plans to have. We also have come before you today to let you know that based on the current analysis of using the CMGC, or the Construction Manager General Contractor delivery method, the delivery date has been extended from December 2020 to July 2021. It's based on a number of assumptions which we will need instruction from Council about financing the project. The independent cost estimate that we did, and I also have Kimberly Horn here, who provided that for us, who did that work for us, has come to a total project cost of $290.7 million, including all finance charges. We've also identified approximately $20.8 million in potential cost savings, items that could be discussed when we went further in the design. And then you have in front of you the recommendations, which I won't go through, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay. Then let's, I'll bring you guys back in just a second, but we have 2 public comment speakers. Steve Needleman and Shiraz Tangri. And since we're doing 2 items together, you each have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Needleman. I am chairman of the board for Los Angeles Streetcar Inc., which is the nonprofit organization that was set up to help bring a streetcar to the downtown streets of Los Angeles. Briefly, I'm just urging your support for this to help us, along with the city, continue the process of making this project happen. It has been, I've spent the past 6-7 years now chairman of this organization, and have been working now most recently with BOE, DOT, and with the CAO office. And it's been really a pleasure to be working and seeing a partnership between all the groups trying to bring something to make it happen. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council Members. Shiraz Tangri of Myers-Navi. I'm General Counsel to LA Streetcar Inc. I'd like to echo Chairman Needleman's support for all the work done by the city over these last couple of years. LASI has traditionally played an advocacy role for this project, and we connect the downtown stakeholders to the project. We got a lot of support when we kicked off the project in the 2011-2012 timeframe. And we often hear people saying, hey, what's going on with that project? And we have to tell them, the city's doing a lot of work, sometimes behind the scenes, sometimes it's not the most sexy work, if you want to call it that, but the engineering work, all the work that's been done over these last couple of years has been, really fundamental to making sure that we have a real project, that we understand what the risks are, what we know about it, what we don't know about it, and to be able to move it forward now. We hope that the council will take the action to move the project forward quickly, figure out that last remaining critical financing piece, and that's really, I think, the last critical domino to fall. The only other comment I would make is on the procurement side. There is a discussion in the report to the council about the form of procurement that's being encouraged and using the CMGC procurement methodology. We've also obviously looked at the P3 public-private partnership options that may be able to support this project. LA Streetcar has always been the private sector support for this project, and we continue to believe that the private sector may play a role, even though we obviously encourage the city to go forward with the procurement method that gets us the project delivered fastest. So we hope the city will keep an open mind on how the private sector can help the project.
Thank you. Sorry to hear you don't think this is sexy, but where else do you get to hear Pepita Pig? All right, if staff could come back up, I just got a couple quick questions. And we'll start with Mr. Huizar, of course.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And this is a much anticipated report that I think lays out the framework on how we should proceed with the streetcar. We've had a lot of support for this concept and idea throughout downtown for a very long time, but we've got to remember this is not only a downtown project, but given the number of people who are now visiting and working and living in downtown, it's not only for downtown per se, but certainly a regional project. It may not cover as much ground, but a lot of people are going to use it. But this report sets us on a path that I think we could get to finalizing this much anticipated project. When the city started taking a more involved role, I think we've got an additional insight and perspective on how to complete it. And the city hasn't done a project like this, and since the streetcars were roaming down the street, and last one was 60s, and we maintained them. But to build something like this, we certainly had to go back and reanalyze and rethink how this can be done. And with the different departments involved, we've gone there, and that's what this report gives us. It gives us a cost estimate that came through, what's the name of the firm, McDonald? Mott McDonald. Then we had an independent analysis from the city, hired its own firm to do independent analysis that we feel strongly with these numbers, where before we were kind of moving around trying to figure out what were the exact numbers. We feel very confident about this given the independent analysis that was done. And the estimates that we have before us, they all are within 4% of one another, so there's not much of elasticity there, so we feel very good about where we're going. And as we've committed, this does not take any money, or we're not asking for $1 from the city general fund. We've committed to that. This also has a project schedule, which I would have liked to be much further ahead, but I think it's realistic at this time. It gives us some realistic time frame as to how we could finally complete this project. But we are at a decision-making point, and that is what financing methodology do we use to get the money we need? The good news is that the money is there. This project is fully funded at Metro with Measure M. The issue we have is how do we draw down upon those dollars, given that, as you know, Mr. Chair, as you sit on the the board, how do we drop down upon those dollars given that these dollars were not anticipated to be tapped into much later? And the other issue we have is, I mentioned both. What methodology do we use to finance? And second, how do we draw down upon the Metro dollars? On the good news side, this project is CEQA cleared. The EIR has been completed. It is 30% engineered. And we also have a 30-year operational plan. So we have 2 decision points to make, and I think this is a very good place for us to be at this time. So thank you for your work on this.
Great. So just to be clear, colleagues, approval of the item today receives and files the latest cost and schedule estimates. It instructs the CAO to report back in 30 days with a financing plan that will include a review of the potential revenue from the CFD tax. And thirdly, it authorizes DOT to submit a request to Metro to accelerate the Measure M funds for the streetcar project. Just a couple quick questions on that, and I believe Ms. Martinez has a couple ones. Just for clarification, the DWP money, is there a board-adopted and budgeted commitment for the $45 million in utility relocations, or is that still pending?
It was a staff-level letter, and we are still pending the MOU with the board at DWP.
Okay. We expect that soon?
We're initiating work on that. I can't give you a timeline on that.
Okay. Is it likely to be within the 30-day report back window?
I would anticipate no.
Okay. Then a question, the Trump administration is, and the Republican Congress is just killing transportation stuff, just killing it. They're killing New Starts and a whole bunch of stuff, including where we're anticipating to get some money from. So we have a contingency to deal with the fact that they're not being helpful.
I'm going to defer to Carrie.
Yeah.
At this point, we have not been told we cannot submit an application. We understand that there are $0 today, but we do not know what Congress may or may not do and where the budget process ends. But officially, FTA has not told us that you shouldn't be submitting applications.
Okay. And have we decided what the specific ask is going to be of Metro yet for the acceleration? Is it the full amount in 2017 dollars, or is it or do we not know yet if it's a full or a partial?
We do not know what the approach is. Depends on the financial plan the CAO cultivates.
I think at a minimum, we'd like to ask for something that can offset our gap right now. That's what makes sense right now.
Okay. And the report the CAO will give us in 30 days, which is essentially the end of recess, so it'll be back in August, I guess. Will that synthesize the council's financial commitments since 2010, when City and Metro first began preparing the environmental documents and include the Prop A, Measure R, and Measure M conditions, sort of a holistic look?
We can include that. I mean, the money that's been committed is more for operations, and the structural shortfall is what we're looking at right now as far as the 30-day report back. But we can provide that as context for the report back.
Ms. Martinez.
I have a question. Has DOT already begun working with Metro on trying to accelerate this project? Has that discussion already begun?
No.
It has not?
No, we do not. We have not.
So the issue I'm having with recommendation number 4 is that moving the streetcar up from to 2020 or 2022 would allow this project to jump ahead other Valley projects, particularly the East Valley Transit Corridor, and that's just simply not an option for me. I don't have to remind this committee that in the Valley, particularly in the Valley, we have the 4th highest ridership in the entire county and the 2nd highest ridership in the Valley. And so these voters, particularly in my district, have supported Measure R and Measure M, and we have not seen that returned. We simply do not have the rail to prove our investment when we've supported these measures at the ballot box. So I just want to ensure that no Valley project, particularly the East Valley Transit Corridor, gets pushed back if the streetcar moves forward or jumps ahead of us. I need to make that very clear. That's just simply not an option for me.
Perhaps,
Maybe we can take separate votes, or we can take this recommendation
Sure.
out, but I can't support this.
I also think Ms. Souza Roundtree can help us on this one, or Mr. Backstrom. If I'm not mistaken, our metro policy, which we're bound by for acceleration of projects, it requires a two-thirds vote of the board. That's one thing, but that it cannot impact or delay any other scheduled project. Is that correct?
Well, and an option to the recommendation may be, instead of instruct them to formally submit an application, would be to report back through the CAO's report in terms of what options are available so that no other projects are delayed or something like that. So I don't know
If I could add to that, we don't know yet if they'll be in conflict. So I think what we're anticipating is to get a report back from Metro itself to tell us what the scenario looks like before we approve anything. And I would assume it'd have to come back to this committee for us to move forward with that acceleration. I've had discussions with the general manager of DOT that she has the same concerns as you do, Ms. Martinez, which is, well, if we do that for the streetcar, what does it mean for all our other projects? So we would want to see the whole picture before we say move forward to accelerate it. I think it's more of a getting feedback from Metro as to what this may or may not look like and what the analysis is before we decide to move forward. If we do move forward with this, we have to see if what the full picture is.
But you are attempting to try to move this project up on the list.
No.
Is that the intent? Are you trying to accelerate the project?
We're trying to accelerate it, but when we get the information back, before we actually say, yes, we are going to accelerate it, we want to hear from Metro of all our projects, how we would accelerate any. I don't think the question has been asked yet from any city project, and this is our first attempt to do that. So we're trying to accelerate this one, but we don't want to accelerate this one unless we see what the pros and cons are, which projects may or may not be affected.
So by looking at the list, this project is third to last on the list.
Okay, I don't have a list.
Ahead of this list, there's at least 4 projects in the valley that rank either 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 9. And so I'm just worried that we start having this conversation about accelerating projects that are this far down the list, that something's got to give. And nothing, as far as I'm concerned, should give in the valley, because we just simply do not have the rail and the transportation projects that we were promised decades ago, and that has never come to fruition. And I cannot support anything that looks at accelerating anything else that impacts valley projects.
Yeah, and then what we also need to see as well is what sources of funds are being used, because within Measure M, some of these projects are within a different funding source. I believe that one project in the valley may be a different funding source, but I would ask that we have Metro analyze that for us, come back to us and explain that before we move forward. This is more of a report back. At some point, we would come back in this committee and say, this is the situation, and they could clarify for us whether we're competing for the same source of funds. We don't have that information with us here within the city. We have to ask Metro to do that for us.
So if we go down this road of exploring what gives and what doesn't, does this committee then vote on whether we, as a committee or as a city council, support to move any project, make a recommendation back to Metro? Is that what you want to get to? I just want to make sure I have a final vote whether I would agree to accelerate any project that leapfrogs over any project in the valley.
I would ask that we come back, ask Metro that question, and then have them come back to us. And then we would commit that we wouldn't move on anything unless we have the full analysis before us in this committee.
This body would not recommend on accelerating any projects until we have all the information, and we wouldn't make any recommendations to the Metro board to do as well.
Yes, and we could clarify that when we make that ask of Metro that they analyze for us the full effect of all our city projects and if this impacts any of those. As I understand it, and we would need to clarify that, the project you're talking about is a different funding source anyway. But even within the funding source that the streetcar is in, we got to see how that impacts other projects within that funding source.
Well, the East Valley Transit Corridor project in Measure M already pushed it to 2021, 2022. In Measure R, it was scheduled for groundbreaking in 2018, so we're already delayed. And so I just want to make sure that I don't want to play games. I want to be very sincere. I cannot support anything that would jump ahead of the.
Perhaps I can wordsmith us to kumbaya. Recommendation number 4 before us is authorize and instruct LADOT to submit to the Metropolitan Transportation Authority a request on behalf of the City of LA to accelerate Measure M funding and/or additional funding sources. That's what's giving Ms. Martinez heartburn.
Right.
Mr. Weezer said he wants to get information from them and then have us discuss the impacts. So perhaps if we changed it to submit a request to initiate a request, initiate those proceedings, and then before it's actually submitted, we
bring it back to the body? Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, that's fine. We just need the analysis done by Metro on that. Yeah.
Okay.
And then offline, if staff could clarify for us that the project that Ms. Martinez is concerned about in particular, and I believe it's a different funding source, so it's not in competition, but we need to clarify that as well. If we could just offline.
The other issue, I get the funding source, Mr. Weezer, but let's be realistic. There's only so many resources that Metro has. And so if you don't have the dedicated staff to accelerate any of our projects or keep within this timeline, something's got to give. So it's just not only the funding source, but I'm also looking at, and I don't sit on Metro. I'm just simply trying to get our project done because it's 20 years in the making and it has not happened. And there's at least 4 projects in the valley that are ahead of an entire list of projects. So just want to make that very clear.
And one of the things I think we'll get back from Metro as a result of the request is an explanation that Metro can't accelerate anything that harms any other project.
Yeah.
And then I think we'll also get explanation back on even if it were to move forward without impacting anything, there would be certain pots of money within Measure M, and I'm not sure if, as a board, we've determined that it would have to come from the particular subregion, which wouldn't threaten the valley anyway. But I'll get all that back from Metro.
Yeah, and I think, as I understand it, some initial conversations I've had is that we're simply drawing down the money, and it doesn't impede or impact any other project that we could say, hey, well, we want to accelerate these other ones too. We could draw down upon those, and we're ready to do so. But I think Ms. Martinez's point is correct in the administrative costs associated with that, right? Like there's the staff time associated. So we should look at this collectively as the general manager of DOT, Celita Reynolds, mentioned as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so let's, unless there's any objection, we'll move this forward with item 4, so exquisitely wordsmithed by me.
Thank you. Now I always love to do kumbaya with the valley, so thank you for working that out with us, Mr. Padet.
Strong in the valley, you know.
Yeah.
All right. That brings us to item number 10. Okay. And just so we know, Housing Committee's meeting in this room at 3. So.
Okay, item number 10 is a Bond and Englander motion relative to amending the LAMC section 80.73.3 to expressly prohibit the storing of vehicles in the street.
Okay, so this is an item we had in this committee in May. It went to Public Works. Mr. Rue had a couple questions there. I believe my staff and his have worked out a resolution that meets my objectives and addresses his concerns, which would be amending the original motion to strike the words "to expressly prohibit this activity." So it would read, I therefore move that the council request the city attorney to prepare and present an ordinance that amends LAMC section 80.73.3 relative to storing vehicles in the street to make it a criminal violation subject to prosecution as a misdemeanor violation.
I think it was, we're also making the technical change to make it 80.73.1.
Yes. Okay. That is also correct. So we're now good? Okay.
This is the item that you asked to be continued in Public Works? Okay.
Okay, so, and Public Works has then, after we approve here, waived, it'll go to council. Yep. Cool. All right, so without objection, that is the direction of the committee. And with that, we are adjourned with a minute to spare before